Berlin, March 1943. In a dim, smoke-stained office deep within the Abwehr headquarters, a man known only to his closest aides as the conscience of Germany unfolded a secret report. Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, head of the Reich's military intelligence, had spent decades watching Europe through the lens of espionage. He had seen armies rise and fall, dictators come and go. But what lay in his hands that evening was unlike any secret he had ever held. The report spoke of an American factory, one said to be capable of producing a 4-engine bomber every hour. A claim so audacious it sounded like Allied propaganda. Yet the numbers were consistent, the sources credible. It bore the name Willow Run, and if it were true, the implications were catastrophic. Canaris traced his finger down the columns of figures, projected output, labor force, engine production, fuel consumption. It was not fantasy, it was arithmetic. A new kind of war was emerging, one where the decisive weapons were not tanks or guns, but factories and conveyor belts. This, he realized, was the front line Germany could not afford to ignore. When Canaris presented the report to his staff, the room fell silent. Some whispered that it was impossible, others that it was irrelevant. Germany already ruled the skies. But Canaris knew better. He understood that victory in modern war belonged not to the most fanatical, but to the most efficient. And somewhere in Michigan, efficiency had become a weapon. Outside, the capital throbbed with confidence. Newspapers proclaimed victory in Russia. Factories churned out Messerschmitts and Panzer IVs, and the Führer promised 1,000 years of supremacy. But deep inside the intelligence service, one man stared at the future and saw the end written in blueprints and steel. Canaris had not survived the labyrinth of German politics by trusting appearances. He was an officer of the old school, one who placed faith in information, not ideology. While others celebrated German conquests, he spent his days poring over intercepted cables, trade manifests, and industrial surveys. He understood that the United States, untouched by bombing and blessed with endless resources, was building something vast beyond imagination. His agents reported from Sweden, Switzerland, and Spain, neutral nations through which industrial secrets quietly flowed. A Swedish engineer wrote of a plant assembling aircraft wings with automobile precision. A diplomat in Lisbon mentioned a conveyor line longer than a warship, and every report, every coded message pointed to the same place: Willow Run, Michigan. At first, the concept sounded absurd. Ford Motor Company, the maker of Model Ts, was now manufacturing heavy bombers. Each one required over 1 million individual components, from spark plugs to hydraulic lines, from oxygen masks to Norden bomb sights. How could such a machine be built with the speed of a car? But that was precisely the genius of it. Instead of building bombers one at a time, Ford would break them into thousands of small, repeatable tasks, each performed by a worker trained for only that task. It was industry distilled to its purest form: repetition, precision, scale. To the Allies, it was ingenuity. To Canaris, it was doom. He sent his findings to Berlin, marked urgent. He warned that if Willow Run reached full capacity, it could overwhelm the Luftwaffe in less than a year. But even as he wrote, he knew the danger his words carried. In a regime that worshipped ideology, logic was heresy, and in a system built on lies, truth was treason. When the report reached the top of the Reich's command structure, it was greeted with laughter. Hermann Göring, the head of the Luftwaffe, waved the papers away with theatrical disdain. "Americans?" he sneered. "They make refrigerators and razor blades. They do not build bombers." His aides roared with approval, and the matter was dismissed before the ink dried. But behind the laughter was fear, the fear of admitting that their enemy might have mastered the very thing Germany had once prided itself on: efficiency. The Reich still viewed war as a matter of will, of blood, of destiny. Factories, manpower, logistics, these were secondary to ideology. They believed that the German soldier's spirit could overcome any industrial disadvantage. Even Albert Speer, the Reich's Minister of Armaments, admitted later that he was stunned by the data. "If these numbers were even half correct," he wrote after the war, "then Germany was doomed the moment the first machine switched on at Willow Run." But no one dared tell Hitler that. To question victory was defeatism. To suggest that America could outbuild Germany was unthinkable. So the report was buried, and Canaris's name quietly added to the growing list of men to be watched. In the smoky cafes of Berlin, officers toasted victories that no longer existed. Propaganda reels showed triumphant columns, fresh tanks, and smiling pilots. Yet in the back rooms of the Abwehr, analysts ran the numbers again and again. The results never changed. The war was shifting away from courage and toward capacity, and capacity was something the Reich could no longer match. Across the Atlantic, on the flat farmlands of Michigan, the impossible was becoming reality. The Willow Run bomber plant, designed by architect Albert Kahn and financed by Henry Ford, became the largest manufacturing building on Earth. It stretched over 67 acres under one roof, so vast that its workers joked about needing bicycles to cross it. To avoid paying taxes in 2 counties, the assembly line curved 90 degrees mid-production, a literal tax turn that became an engineering marvel. Here, Ford's philosophy of the assembly line was reborn. Each B-24 Liberator moved down the line in stages, wings and fuselage joined in rhythm, engines lowered into place by cranes that never stopped moving. By mid-1944, 42,000 workers filled the plant. 1/3 were women, real-life Rosie the Riveters. Thousands were African American, many migrating north for the first time to join the war effort. Farmers, teachers, and housewives worked side by side, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The sound inside Willow Run was unrelenting, a mechanical heartbeat that pulsed with the tempo of war. The air smelled of oil, metal, and ozone. Every 63 minutes, another bomber rolled out of the hangar under its own power, ready for flight. For comparison, German aircraft factories needed weeks to finish one. Ford called it mass production for freedom. The Allies called it the arsenal of democracy. To Canaris, it was proof that his nightmare had come to life. Each new bomber meant another city within Germany's reach. Each factory shift, another step toward collapse. In the span of a year, Willow Run produced more aircraft than the entire Luftwaffe could replace, and there was nothing the Reich could do to stop it. By 1944, the skies above Europe had changed color. They no longer belonged to the Luftwaffe. They belonged to the endless formations of 4-engine bombers rising from England and Italy. The sound of their engines was the sound of inevitability. Operation Big Week in February 1944 was the proof. Over 6 days, thousands of Willow Run bombers struck at the heart of German industry. Factories in Regensburg, Leipzig, and Gotha vanished under clouds of fire. Aircraft assembly lines were shattered, and synthetic fuel plants burned for months. The Luftwaffe's losses were staggering. Hundreds of aircraft and irreplaceable pilots gone in a week. Inside Berlin, panic rippled through the corridors of power. Hitler demanded new wonder weapons: the jet, the rocket, the miracle that would turn the tide. But miracles require materials, and Germany was running out of both. Canaris, now increasingly alienated, knew it was over. He had warned them when they could have acted. Now it was too late. The Reich had been defeated not by superior armies or tactics, but by arithmetic, by the capacity of one nation's factories to outproduce another's delusion. When Germany finally looked upward, the sky was filled with the machines that arrogance had dismissed as impossible. And below, the same factories that once mocked America's inferior industry now lay silent, buried under the ruins of their own disbelief. Admiral Canaris did not live to see the peace that followed. After the failed July 20th plot against Hitler, the Gestapo seized his diaries, proof of his opposition to the regime. He was arrested, tried in secret, and executed at Flossenburg concentration camp in April 1945, strangled with piano wire as Allied forces advanced. Weeks later, Germany surrendered. The war that began with ideology had ended in mathematics. The Allies had produced 300,000 aircraft, Germany scarcely a third of that. Willow Run alone had built nearly 7,000 Liberators, more than the Luftwaffe's total operational bombers that year. After the war, Willow Run returned to making automobiles, its assembly lines humming with peacetime rhythm. Today it stands as a relic of industry, a monument to scale, efficiency, and determination. But its true legacy is deeper. It proved that freedom's chaos could outbuild tyranny's order, that diversity, mocked as weakness, could become the ultimate strength. History remembers Canaris as the spy who saw the truth too early, and Willow Run as the factory that ended the war before the generals realized it. Because in the end, it wasn't bombs or bullets that doomed the Reich. It was the refusal to believe in facts. And facts, unlike empires, do not die.